All right, there comes a point where a lot of folks say, you know, you keep taxing me to death. I am so out of here. Wall Street Journal with a story today that says some of the high-tax states like New York and California are already feeling it. And if the trend is any indication, over 800,000 could bolt from those respective states simply because they have been taxed to death and they have the wherewithal to move elsewhere. And they will. Conservative commentator Gina Lau, Democratic strategist Chuck Rocha. Gina, what do you think of that?
Well, I'm living proof of that, I'm one of those who left California and moved to Florida for precisely some of the reasons you're stating, Neil. And so, and I talk to people every day who've done the exact same thing, who are now living here in Florida and who've moved from New York or California.
All right. You know, Chuck, it's starting in a lot of other places. Now, a lot of these states that have these, you know, they're beautiful. California's beautiful. There are lots of parts of New York and this wonderful city here. That are startling. And a lot of politicians rally around the idea, who would want to leave? Well, apparently a lot of people do if they get to a point where they're taxed to hell, right?
Well, I feel like I should say that I'm the opposite because I moved from Texas that doesn't have a state income tax to Washington, D.C. that tax my local income 10% here in Washington, 9.9%. But let's look at the overall numbers. What you're talking about is exactly right in New York and California. But it's been going on since the census has been happening, at least for the last 20 to 30 years, where we've been losing congressional seats because populations are moving out of older areas like New York and New England and Connecticut. But what's interesting to me is what you talk about with California, because there's a newer population there, and you're starting to see a migration over into Arizona and Nevada. It could be for the taxes, or it could be people just getting older and wanting to go someplace that don't rain so much.
There is that. But, Gina, you know, there is a point at which a lot of people now, maybe in those states, and maybe Republicans and their tax cut could be to blame in these high-tax states where they can't write off as much now under the new plan. So whosever fault it is, it's real, it's palpable, and those high-tax states should be concerned, shouldn't they?
Well, just because the rest of the country isn't supplementing the overspending states like California and New York, that doesn't make those people that don't want to pay the other states' taxes to be at fault. And if you look at this, Neil, it's just going to force blue states to perhaps look at actually reducing their taxes. That's really where they are. They don't want to talk about that. They want to play the blame game instead, but I don't think that will bode well for them going forward.
I don't see that happening. Look, I'm a New Jersey resident. And we've got a new governor who wants a surtax on rich folks, and they're doubling down on more spending. I don't see them getting a handle on that sort of thing, but maybe that's just New Jersey. Chuck, what do you think?
Well, I think that what you've seen at the federal level, and you've covered it here on this show, is that there's been a lot of moving around of the taxes. You've seen just the tax reduction that just happened. So what happens a lot in the, like even when you cut back on the taxes, a lot of that was diverted to the states, is no longer going to the states. And you see some of these states hiking up their rates to make up for those differences when they should be cutting overall budgets. And so that could be a big part of it. As a Democrat, I'm going to say that I don't think that's all of it, but I think that all of it has a stair-step, multi-layered approach to a lot of this, and that's the reason that it's happening.
All I know is that the biggest and most booming economies or states are to the point that Chuck discovered with Texas. He was the only person who moved out. But kidding here, but they tend to seek out low tax environments, and the booming states are those that have them.
And you see that the people for a long time from New York City, if you go and do politics in Florida, there's a whole generation of multi-layered generations who've moved from New York to Florida. I do campaigns there all the time, and you have to do a separate thing.
So that's what I'm saying, Gina, that you'll seek out the least resistance. Money, regulation, taxes, right?
I don't think it's the sole reason, but I think it has a big part.
Go ahead, Gina.
3.5 million people have already made that exodus, and we expect a lot more. Art Laffer and Steve Moore said another 800,000 are to leave, and I believe those estimates. And Neil, I'm seeing this every single day. As I said, I talk to these people. The scariest part of this for those blue states, Neil, is it is the job creators that are going to be hit the hardest by the overtaxing of the blue states, and they're going to be making decisions to leave and possibly take their companies with them.
All right, guys, we'll watch closely. Appreciate it.